Before we get to covering Legion properly, we have to take a brief look at the cosmology lore of World of Warcraft. Legion was the first expansion where the cosmology would start to take center stage and would go on to affect the stories of the later expansions as well. Here is the famous WoW cosmology chart. It has 6 cosmic powers: light, void, life, death, order and disorder. Each of these powers is vying for dominance over one another, but they all mostly exist in balance. Above all of these powers are the first ones, who ordered them, made them in balance, created their respective realms and then disappeared somewhere currently unknown. All reality works on essentially a code called language of the first ones. As said before, each of the powers has their own realms of existence, and within that realm they have what we call Xe'ra spaces. Xe'ra means cornerstone, and each cornerstone space is named after the power they are in. For example, Xerath Mortis is Cornerstone of Death, and that's the cornerstone of the Shadowlands. Xerath Vitae is the Cornerstone of Life, and that's the cornerstone of the Realms of Life, and so on. The first ones made the 6 realms out of their workshops, which are located in the Xerath spaces. For example, for Death, this workshop was called Sepulchre of the First Ones. At the center of all these 6 powers is reality, where the 6 powers collide and, as said, are mostly kept in balance. Tipping this balance would lead to a much different reality. What it would look like is something that we can only theorize about. For the story of Legion, the lore of 2 of these powers is the most important: Order and Death. The representatives and the highest beings in the hierarchy of Order are the Titans. They start their existence as world souls. Basically, planets are their eggs and they incubate inside planets for a very long time. It is uncertain if the birth of a Titan destroys a planet, and not every planet has a world soul. Throughout the ages, a number of world souls would be born into Titans. These Titans would find each other and over time form the Pantheon of Order, led by Aman'Thul. Their main enemy during this time was the Void. The Void Lords would send out parasites that would latch onto planets and corrupt the unborn world soul within. These parasites would come to be known as the Old Gods. The forces of disorder, the demons, would also be a problem, as they would go on to corrupt many populations of the cosmos. The Pantheon of Order picked a titan named Sargeras as their champion, and he was tasked with ridding the universe of the void and demonic threats. He would be very much good at this job, fighting the void and capturing demons he found on a place called Mardum, which became a huge demon prison. The experience of looking at so much corruption would weigh heavily on Sargeras, and at one point he would come across a world soul so corrupted by the void that he literally cut the planet in half. When the Titans found this out, they were mortified. They were even more mortified by his new plan to snuff all life out of the cosmos so that nothing could fall into void corruption. He thought that the life would find a way to come back, but this time uncorrupted by the void. The Titans weren't down with this plan, so he murdered them all. Norgannon, one of the Titans, managed to save their souls and send them across the cosmos to Azeroth into the Titan Keepers left there during the ordering of Azeroth. Sargeras would then free the demons of Mardum, forming the Burning Legion. He would then go on across the cosmos, looking for races to corrupt by infusing them with fell magic, which would turn them into demons. If a creature consumes enough of one type of cosmic power, they would get turned into a creature of that power. So when he came to Argus and offered the Eredar fell magic, which a lot of them took, minus Prophet Velan and his Draenei, the Eredar would turn into demons, the Man'ari. The demonic Eredar would become major players in the Burning Legion, with their leaders Kil'jaeden and Archimonde becoming Sargeras' lieutenants. The world of Argus was important for another reason. It had a world soul. The Nathrezim, also known as the Dreadlords, came to Sargeras and told him that if filled with enough death magic, the soul of Argus could be used to take the souls of dead demons from the Twisting Nether and regenerate them much faster, bringing them back to life. Demon souls always come back to life regardless, just much slower, unless killed in the Twisting Nether, in which case they are dead for good. Sargeras agreed, and from then on Argus would become the main base of operations for the Burning Legion. He would then start his Burning Crusade, destroying and corrupting worlds across the cosmos. Azeroth would prove to be a thorn in his side, as he tried to take it many times but failed. Over time he would also collect all the souls of the Titans he killed, and he would keep them in Antorus, the Burning Throne. the main base of Legion operations on Argus, except for Ionar, who would hide in Elunaria, a world which is most likely tied to the pantheon of life, possibly even being a realm in the realms of life. The second pantheon we need to cover before we get to Legion properly is the Pantheon of Death, also known as the Eternal Ones and the Shadowlands. The Shadowlands is a place where mortal souls go when they die. Here they are judged by the Arbiter, who decides the afterlife of a soul. There are many different afterlives, both good and bad, but the worst one is the Maw, a place where only the most irredeemable of souls go. The Arbiter of Shadowlands was a creature named Zovaal. He would judge the souls of mortals based on the rules set in place by the first ones. Over time he would see this design as flawed. Souls could get judged out of context, families would be separated, and he wondered why he followed these rules when he was the one who judged the actual souls. So he wanted to break into the sepulchre of the first ones, and from there remake the flawed cycle of life and death. The other members of the Pantheon of Death found this out and imprisoned him in the Maw. Primus, one of the Eternal Ones, twisted the language of the first ones into domination magic, and used it to bind Zovaal there. After that, a mechanical arbiter was put in place so that it wouldn't get any smart ideas like Zovaal did. Zovaal would become a creature of myth in the Shadowlands, and many would start calling him the Jailer, seeing him as the Maw personified, a creature that jails those forever damned. The memory of the Jailer being an arbiter was only left for the oldest creatures of the Shadowlands, and many would never know he was the Arbiter in the first place. The Jailer over time would learn to twist domination magic and use it himself. However, an army of evil and scary souls from the Maw wouldn't do him much good if they're all stuck there, and he was also chained up. So, at some point, Sargeras, one of the Eternal Ones, allied himself with the Jailer. Sargeras is also the father of Dreadlords, and he would send them across the cosmos to act as spies, infuse themselves with so much of a type of magic that they would become that type of creatures, for example infusing themselves with fell magic so that they would become demons who would spy on the Burning Legion. The reasons why the Dreadlords would infuse Argus with death magic, as said before, isn't to regenerate demons faster. It was so that Argus would become a creature of death. This would mean that when he dies, he wouldn't go to the realm of order, where titans normally go when they die, but he would go to the Shadowlands. His soul would crash into the mechanical arbiter and break it, sending all souls into the Maw, where Zovaal would consume them to become stronger. From then on, his plan was to obtain the sigils, basically keys to Zerath Mortis held by the Eternal Ones, and go into the sepulchre of the first ones, from where he hoped to reshape reality with the power of the world soul of Azeroth. He couldn't get these keys himself though, so he needed another ally, one that he would find in Sylvanas Windrunner. Sylvanas, seeing no reason to live after Arthas was defeated, killed herself during Cataclysm, and the Jailer snatched her soul up from the Maw where she was initially sent, shown her how she would never be reunited with her family, not even in death, and how she was sent to the Maw because of things Arthas forced her to do, while Zul'jin, who killed so many innocents, was given a chance at repentance, and he slowly won her over to his cause. Not at first though, she would still need some convincing, and he didn't want to force her to serve, at least seemingly so. So he gave her a number of predictions, but the most important ones for the story of the Legion are that a great darkness would return to Azeroth and that Sylvanas would have to step out of the shadows and lead. There we end the Cosmology section. Now we can take a proper look at the Legion and understand it better. The story of Legion starts after Illidan's defeat at the hands of Arthas after Warcraft 3: The Frozen Throne. Illidan would make his way back to the Black Temple and heal. He would then train Blood Elves and Night Elves to become Demon Hunters, or the Illidari. Together they would attack many Legion worlds, most notably Nathreza, a world inhabited by demonic dreadlords serving the Legion, which the Illidari would destroy. He would also sort of project his spirit onto Argus to spy on Kil'jaeden, but he was found out. However, Illidan was saved by a really powerful Elder Naaru, who also gave him a vision of Illidan in the future, now wielding light magic and being a champion of the light, calling him the Child of Light and Shadow. The vision disturbed Illidan immensely. Illidan and the Illidari would then keep striking at the Legion worlds. The most important mission of theirs was striking at Mardum, the former demonic prison, and stealing an item called Sargerite Keystone. that can be used to travel to every world controlled by the Legion. This mission happened at the same time the champions of Azeroth raided Black Temple. The Eldari would be successful in their mission, but they would come back to their master being killed by the champions of Azeroth, the Wardens and the traitor Akama. The Wardens, led by Maiev Shadowsong, would promptly arrest all demon hunters that returned from Mardoom and put them in a strange stasis state within some green crystals made out of their own demonic blood. They also preserved the body of Illidan in a crystal of the same kind and took the Sargerite keystone, keeping them in the vault of the Wardens. Many years would pass, the ending of Warlords of Draenor would happen, where Archimonde would send Gul'dan from the alternate timeline into our timeline with the task of opening up the way for the Legion to return. Khadgar and Maiev Shadowsong would hunt him down, but they were too late. Gul'dan made his way into the Tomb of Sargeras and opened an ancient sealed portal from the War of the Ancients. The Legion would invade Azeroth in droves, and Khadgar and Maiev had to run. The leadership of the Alliance and the Horde was notified, and they would preemptively strike on the Broken Shore, an island where the Tomb of Sargeras was located. The united forces of Horde and the Alliance were led by War Chief Vol'jin and King Varian Vryn. The two forces got separated and attacked on both sides, and so Sylvanas had to call off the archers that provided covering fire for the Alliance, leading Alliance to believe that the Horde betrayed them. The attack was ultimately a failure. King Varian Vryn would sacrifice himself to save his forces, and he would be killed by Gul'dan himself, while War Chief Vol'jin would be mortally wounded. Two armies would make their way back home. War Chief Vol'jin, with his last few breaths, told Sylvanas that the Loa told him to pick her as the next war chief. In truth, it was Muezala, one of the jailer's servants in the Shadowlands connected with the trolls, who whispered it to Vol'jin. Vol'jin died and Sylvanas accepted the mantle. Two of the jailer's predictions came to pass in a matter of days. A great darkness returned, Legion, and now Sylvanas had to step up and lead. With these two coming to pass, Sylvanas decided to fully ally herself with the jailer. Back on the Alliance side, Anduin Vryn is proclaimed the new king, and a funeral ceremony is held for Varian. After the battle for Broken Shore, Gul'dan and Cordan of Hellsong, the traitor Warden from Warlords of Draenor, would strike at the vault of the Wardens in search for Illidan's corpse, which was intended to be used as a vessel for Sargeras. Maiev, in her desperation, freed the imprisoned Illidari, as she hated the Legion even more than she did demon hunters. Chaos ensued, and Gul'dan and Cordana were ultimately successful in stealing Illidan's body. Along the way they also took the Sargerite keystone, with Maiev Shadowsong chasing after them and going missing for a while. The Wardens and the Illidari that remained in the Vault of the Wardens would then escape the vault. The Night Elf and Blood Elf Illidari would go to pledge their allegiances to the Alliance and the Horde respectively, and they would come right during the funeral ceremonies for Varian and Vol'jin, where they would find that the demons infiltrated the funerals and helped with dealing with the demonic threat, thus getting accepted into the fold. The demons would make strikes across Azeroth, and because of this, Jaina brought the magical city of Dalaran under Alliance control since Mists of Pandaria to Deadwind Pass to defend Stormwind and surrounding areas. Khadgar believed that Dalaran must be used in defense of Azeroth as a whole, and that the Horde should be let back into the city, and so he called upon a vote among the Dalaran leadership. The vote went in his favor. Jaina got angry and left, unseen for the duration of the expansion. Khadgar then enlisted the champions of Azeroth to help him search Karazhan and Ulduar for the means to stop the invasion, where they discovered the existence of the Pillars of Creation, artifacts that were given to the Titan Keepers during the Ordering of Azeroth that were later used during the War of the Ancients to seal the portal in the Tomb of Sargeras, the same one that Gul'dan recently opened. The Pillars of Creation were scattered across the Broken Isles, so the Kirin Tor teleported the city of Dalaran above the Broken Isles. The thing is, the Legion was already on their way to corrupt the denizens of the Broken Isles, with many allying themselves with the Legion, most notably the city of Suramar. Their leader, Grand Magistrix Elisande, was afraid of what the Legion might do, so she decided that it would be for the best to stay on the winning side. The champions of Azeroth would be charged with finding the Pillars of Creation and bringing them to Dalaran. However, as the Alliance and the Horde were beefing again because of that whole retreating archers at the Broken Shore fiasco, the classes of champions decided that it was for the best to seek the Broken Isles with no binds to the Alliance or the Horde. Thus, the class orders were put in focus focus, where each class order would put in the effort to stop the Legion. Each class order has its own campaign, a lot of it are just side stories, so I will just list out some important things that affect the story of Legion and beyond. The priests would meet Calia Menethil, the last living heir of Lord Darkend, and they would also turn a void god back into a Naaru, showing us how the light and the void are two sides of the same coin. The priest specializing in shadow would obtain Xalatat, an ancient sentient blade of unknown origin, but that was used in service of the Black Empire. This blade would play a major role in battle for Azeroth. The paladins would find Tyrion Fordring trapped on the broken shore where he was left after the battle there, however he would die here and a paladin would take the Ashbringer. The Death Knights would raise new 4 horsemen consisting of Darian Morgraine, Sally Whitemane, Thoras Trollbane and Nazgrim. They would also reconnect with the Lich King at the time, Bolvar Fordragon, while also reforging the shards of Frostmourne into the blades of the fallen prince. The Shaman would gather the Earthen Ring and make peace among the elements who were still in chaos after the Cataclysm. A Shaman would also become the wielder of Doomhammer after Thrall found it unusable because of the guilt he felt for the whole thing with Garrosh Hellscream. The Rogues would be joined by Vanessa Van Cleef, an important character in the stories of Vanilla and Cataclysm. A couple of class orders would also find out what's below Tirisfal Glades. Unsurprisingly, it's the Tomb of Tyr, a Titan Keeper who was instrumental in creating the dragon aspects. The most important bit for Legion is the Illidari storyline, who would make contact with the soul of Illidan Stormrage, which was out and about in the Twisting Nether after being expelled from his body by Gul'dan to make space for Sargeras. Illidan is more demon at this point, so his soul is more demonic than not, thus roaming the Twisting Nether. Illidan would instruct the Illidari to seek the Sargerite Keystone and also to go to the Black Temple and seek the help of Akama once again. Akama wasn't really into this, so the Illidari would separate the soul of Akama and take the piece that was loyal to the Illidari with them, as he knew all the plans for destroying the Legion. The Illidari would also break into the Vault of the Wardens, kill Cordana Felsong and get the Sargerite Keystone back, which was in her possession. The heroes of Azeroth would seek the Pillars of Creation across the Broken Isles, managing to collect 4 out of 5 with some degree of trouble. In Stormheim, the champions of Azeroth would face the Felscorn, a Rykul tribe loyal to the Legion. They would compete with them for the Aegis of Argramar, which was held by Odin, a Titan Keeper who resided in the Halls of Valor. A piece of Ulduar he took to the skies after disagreeing on giving titanic powers to the dragon aspects. However, Odin was trapped within the Halls of Valor by Helia, the first of the Valkyr out of spite for the transformation. Odin once managed to get a look into the Shadowlands and see how the Kyrian were carrying souls of mortals off into the afterlives, so inspired by this he made the Valkyr, to bring the spirits of valorous warriors to him. The first Valkyr, Helia, wasn't too happy with this, so she cursed him and trapped him in the Halls of Valor. The champions of Azeroth managed to defeat the Felscorn and obtain the Aegis of Agramar. The champions would later visit High Mountain, where they would meet an uncorrupted black dragon Ebonhorn, while also obtaining the Hammer of Khaz'goroth. In a cursed Night Elf region of Azsuna, the champions of Azeroth would obtain the Tidestone of Golganneth after having some troubles with Queen Azshara's Naga, and lastly, in the region of Al-Shara, the heroes of Azeroth would face the Emerald Nightmare, a corrupted version of the Emerald Dream by the Old Gods and the Void. This corruption was spread by Xavius, the former corrupted advisor to Queen Azshara. The battle against this corruption was tough, with the dragon aspect Xe'ra falling into corruption and ultimately having to be killed. After the defeat of Xe'ra, the champions of Azeroth would claim the Tears of Elune, the 4th pillar of creation. The champions of Azeroth would then go into the Emerald Nightmare and cleanse the dream of corruption, defeating Xavius. What's very interesting is that we see a non-interactable ghost of Xe'ra, who walks towards a cave where a small void flower grows, showing us that the void is not totally out of the dream yet. In Al-Shara we would also find and free the imprisoned Maya of Shadowsong with the help of her brother Jarad. The 5th pillar of creation, the Eye of Amantul, was kept in the city of Suramar, which as we said is allied with the Legion. It would take the heroes of Azeroth months before they would be able to free the city with the help of the Nightfallen, a rebel group of the Nightborn who didn't want to ally themselves with the Legion. They were cut out from their power source, the Nightwell, thus withering and dying. We would seek their help and would slowly liberate Suramar city and the surrounding region. The Alliance and the Horde would occasionally clash, most notably at Stormheim, where the forces of Sylvanas and her champion Nathanos Blightcaller would fight with the Alliance forces led by Greymane. During this time we would find Sylvanas making shady deals with Helia, who was also allied with the jailer. Helya then gave Sylvanas an item called the Soul Cage that Sylvanas was supposed to use to enslave Aegir, the leader of the Valkyr, and then force her to give her Valkyr to Helya, who would corrupt them and make them servants of the jailer. Again, Greymane thought that Sylvanas wanted to use Aegir to continue raising the Forsaken, so he chased her down, found her torturing chained Aegir, and then managed to break the Soul Cage and free Aegir, proclaiming that he took her future the same way she took his when she killed his son during the Cataclysm. After we deal with the problems in Val'Sharah, something would fall into the orbit of Azeroth and onto the shores of Suramar. Khadgar was sent us to recover this artifact, which would turn out to be the core of an Elder Naaru called Xe'ra, which contained the message from the army of the Light and Turalian, who went missing along with Alleria Windrunner after the destruction of Draenor. The message would tell us to seek Prophet Velen. We would go to Exodar, which is under attack by the Legion, led by Velen's corrupted son. Velen explains to us that only Oros, the last descendant of Xe'ra, can unlock the core. However, Oros is destroyed by the Legion. We defeat Velen's son and leave for Dalaran. Before leaving, we overhear that the Draenor are preparing to work on a vessel that will take them home, to Argus. The Light's Heart, as the core of Xe'ra is called, remains in Dalaran until Khadgar figures out that the Tears of Elune could be used to activate it. The plan succeeds and we get a vision of Xe'ra, who tells us that she seeks the child of light and shadow, Illidan Stormrage. It's not explicitly said, but it's strongly hinted that Xe'ra is the same Elder Naaru who gave the vision to Illidan while rescuing him from Argus. She explains that the Light's Heart can be used as a vessel. She would then send us to the Illidari, who searched for the soul of Illidan and found out it was being held by Helya in Helheim, her cursed domain. We would defeat Helya, obtain the soul of Illidan, which would be kept in Light's Heart until we were able to recover his body. The defeat of Helya also liberated Odin from being imprisoned within the Halls of Valor. While working on liberating Suramar, the champions of Azeroth would have to go back to the mainland and stop the Legion from taking over Karazhan. We are successful and we get to meet the spirit of Medivh, where he and Khadgar have a touching moment. The forces of Azeroth, together with the Night Fallen, slowly encroach upon the city of Suramar. All that would remain is the Nighthold, where Grand Magistrix Elisande and her most loyal followers reside. Not only that, but Gul'dan is atop of the Nighthold Tower, the Night Spire, where he is doing a ritual to use Illidan's body as a vessel for Sargeras. And not only that, the Eye of Aman'Thul, the last pillar of creation, is right there with them. So that's 3 birds with 1 stone we can take out. We blast into Nighthold, defeat everything in sight including Grand Magistrix Elisande, and make our way to the top of the Night Spire, where we fight Gul'dan. During the fight, Gul'dan uses the powers of the Eye of Aman'Thul, but we manage to persevere. Near the end of the fight, Sargeras would take possession of Illidan's body for a brief while, but is ultimately defeated by the champions of Azeroth. Khadgar then uses the Light's Heart to transfer the soul of Illidan back into his body, and Illidan Stormrage is finally resurrected. He takes Gul'dan, literally disenchants him until all that is left is his skull. Then we get a nice moment of character development where Illidan crushes the skull to pieces instead of consuming it as he might have done in the past, and as he did do with the main timeline Gul'dan's skull. Now that we have Illidan back into the fold and all 5 pillars of creation, it was time to strike back at the Broken Shore. Kil'jaeden would increase the intensity of the invasion, while the class orders would unite into a coalition called Armies of Legionfall, and this time we managed to perform successful strikes at the Broken Shore, establishing a foothold. We make our way towards the Tomb of Sargeras, where we plan to seal the Legion portal with the Pillars of Creation. During the fighting at the Broken Shore, an Alliance adventurer would find a compass that belonged to Varian Vryn. They would show this compass to King Anduin, who would come to the Broken Shore to witness the place where his father fell. Here he would recover his father's sword, Charlemagne, which would light up once again when Anduin takes it. Also during this time, Deathlord of the Ebon Blade, supplied with information by the Lich King, would go into the Ruby Sanctum, the main residence of the Red Dragonflight, to seek out information regarding a great dragon skeleton somewhere in the Northrend. The Deathlord is then given a choice to murder all dragons here or spare them. The consequences of this choice will most likely be explored in the next expansion, Dragonflight. Back to the main story, the armies of Legionfall led by Illidan, Prophet Velen, Maya Shadowsong and Khadgar break into the Tomb of Sargeras, where the Pillars of Creation were placed at various points to seal the entry of demons into Azeroth. We also fight the dreaded Avatar Sargeras, locked in a Titan facility beneath the tomb, now reawakened by Kil'jaeden. After the Avatar is defeated, the champions, together with Illidan, Velen and Khadgar, would chase after him into the Twisting Nether. Maya would stay behind to guard the tomb. We would end up on Kil'jaeden's spaceship, where we would make our way towards him. The spaceship would make its way in the orbit of Argus while we fought Kil'jaeden. The fighting would be intense, but we would finally defeat Kil'jaeden. Kil'jaeden, with his dying words, said that he was always envious of Velen and never really believed Sargeras could be stopped. Velen places his palm upon Kil'jaeden's forehead in silence, out of empathy or maybe forgiveness, and Kil'jaeden dies. Kil'jaeden's spaceship, sustaining heavy damage and with no one to steer it, would then start blowing up all over the place and would slowly crash into the orbit of Argus. Illidan tells us not to worry and uses the Sargerite keystone to bring us home. But not only did he do this, he also opened a massive rift between Azeroth and Argus. Khadgar is mortified by this, but Illidan smiles and says that the hand of fate sometimes must be forced. Earlier I mentioned that the Draenor would start work on a vessel to bring them home to Argus. Well, the work is done and the vessel, the Vindicar, is done. The champions of Azeroth would make their way to Argus. Here we would witness the arrival and the crash of Zenithar, a major spaceship of the Army of the Light, an army that was comprised of the survivors of Legion invaded worlds, who fought the Legion for thousands of years. Here we finally meet Alleria Windrunner and Turalyon, literal walking legends of Azeroth, who disappeared after the destruction of Draenor, who then ended up in the Army of the Light, where they fought the Legion for 1,000 years. Time works differently in the Twisting Nether, and they were also granted immortality. We are also accompanied by Lothraxion, a light-infused dreadlord who was sent by Turalyon to aid the paladins during the Broken Isles campaign. Along the way we would meet Eredar survivors who refused to bend the knee to the Legion, but were still mutated into the Broken called Krokul. We would make our way to the crashed Zenithar, where we would find the shards of Xe'ra. Returning the Light's heart, Xe'ra's core, to her would reawaken her. She would see Illidan right away, and bent on making her prophecy of the Child of Light and Shadow come true, she would start imbuing Illidan with the light. Illidan was very much against this. He believed that there were no chosen one, and he had already had experience with trading freedom for power before. So Illidan would get enraged and would literally destroy Xe'ra with his powers, blowing the Elder Naaru to pieces. Turalyon would get really angry with this and would take a swing at Illidan, who would literally just grab his sword and tell him that they can only save themselves. The Argus campaign would then begin with the champions of Azeroth and their allies making their way towards Antorus, the Burning Throne, where they hoped to strike at the very engine that resurrects the soul of the Legion. They would also come across the seat of the Triumvirate, where they would fight a Darkened Naaru, whose powers Alleria would consume, granting her more powers of the Void and a new Void form. She was known to dabble in the powers of the Void before, for which she was even imprisoned by Xe'ra before crash landing on Argus. Now the last thing that remained was Antorus, the Burning Throne. Magni Bronzebeard would join us at Argus, now a speaker for Azeroth after his reawakening, and would discover that Argus has a world soul as well. We would invade Antorus, freeing the titans Sargeras kept after capturing their souls. We would also visit Elonaria, where we would protect Ionar. Now that all the titans were freed, we would get teleported to the seat of the Pantheon, from which the titans wanted to use the powers of the world soul of Argus to imprison Sargeras once and for all. The world soul of Argus is brought to the seat of the Pantheon, severing its connection with the Burning Legion. As we make our way throughout Antorus and later to the seat of the Pantheon, we could see a growing cloud looming over Azeroth. This was Sargeras coming for our world. The main reason Sargeras could never claim Azeroth was that he didn't know exactly where it was in the cosmos, but with the rift opened by the Sargerite keystone after the raid on the Tomb of Sargeras, Azeroth was now closer than ever. Sargeras then commands the soul of Argus to rise and kill the champions of Azeroth and the Titans, even imbuing Argus with some of his powers. But with the help of the Titans we are ultimately successful in defeating Argus. Argus's soul would be sent right into the Shadowlands for the reasons described in the Cosmology section of the video, slamming into the mechanical arbiter that was judging the souls there and literally breaking the machine of death, rerouting all newly coming souls into the Maw, right into the jailer's domain, empowering him immensely. At the end of the fight, Sargeras would finally come out, desperate to strike at Azeroth, and would manage to stab the planet with his sword. The Titans would use their collective powers, along with the last of Argus's energies, and would imprison Sargeras within the seat of the Pantheon. Illidan would remain here to serve as Sargeras' jailer forever, while the champions of Azeroth would make their way home with the Vindicar, accompanied by their allies from the Army of the Light. The rift between Argus and Azeroth would close, and a red star would adorn the skies of Azeroth, a distant seat of the Pantheon where Sargeras was imprisoned. Sargeras' sword would destroy Silithus completely, but it would also cause the planet immense damage. Magni Bronzebeard would then use the powerful artifacts that the champions of Azeroth gathered, like the Ashbringer, Doomhammer, Blades of the Fallen Prince, etc., to stop Azeroth from dying, but weakening the artifacts immensely. What's interesting is that the Shadow Priest dagger of Xe'la was also used for this process, however the sentience within would still remain as seen in Battle for Azeroth. Now that the Arbiter was destroyed, the next phase of the Jailer's plan was about to commence. Sylvanas was to cause as much death as possible in order to empower the Jailer before she would make her way to the Shadowlands herself. This task, combined with Azerite, literal blood of Azeroth that was popping up all over the place as a result of Sargeras' stab, which would prove to be a powerful resource, would be the sparks required to start the Fourth War, but more on that in the Battle for Azeroth video. As a nice epilogue to the story of Legion, we find a crystal on the Vindicar, left behind by Illidan. Through it we hear a recording of Illidan telling us that the crystal contains two messages. The first one was for Malfurion, Illidan's twin brother, telling him how the teachings of Cenarius were never for him and how he wished to quell the strife that divided them, and also telling him to take care of Tyrande. The second message was for Tyrande, Illidan's love of his life, who chose his brother over him. To her, Illidan tells that he always kept her in his heart as his anchor. He also tells her to take care of Malfurion and that she made the right choice choosing him, even though he sometimes wished it was different. After delivering the messages, Illidan told us to go to the second Well of Eternity atop Mount Hyjal and leave the crystal there, where it is revealed that there is one last message for you, the player character. A projection of Illidan, Malfurion and Tyrande sitting on a bench appears. Illidan tells us that we have proven our commitment to Azeroth and that our dedication and sacrifices rival his own. He then tells us that the defense of Azeroth is now in our hands. With that, the message is over and the echoes will dissipate and fall into the Well of Eternity. And so, the story of Legion is over. Thank you very much for watching. If you wanna see the next step in the story, I recommend my Battle for Azeroth video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Leave a like if you learned something new, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Peace.